soft ambient wind, distant echoes. In the beginning there was Old Grey, a world unformed, shrouded by endless fog. Stone arches rose from barren crags, reaching toward skies that held no sun, no moon, no stars. These were the arch trees, ancient beyond reckoning, their roots buried in foundations that predated time itself. Upon their branches and within their hollows dwelled the everlasting dragons, immortal beings clad in scales of stone. They knew neither life nor death, for such concepts had not yet been born into existence. This was the age of ancients, an epoch of perfect stillness. Nothing changed, nothing grew, nothing ended. The dragons ruled not through conquest or dominion, but through simple existence. They were the world, and the world was them. Beneath their stone scales lay immortality itself, an armor that could not be pierced, could not be broken, could not fade. The land knew no warmth, no cold. There was no light to cast shadows, no darkness to contrast against illumination. All things existed in perpetual gray, a singular note held for eternity. In this unchanging realm there were others besides the dragons. Giants walked among the arch trees, creatures of stone and bark who shared the dragon's timelessness. And there were smaller beings, humanoid forms that existed in the spaces between. Yet these creatures lived without purpose, without drive, for they possessed no true sentience. They were hollow things, empty vessels waiting for something to fill them. Deep beneath the surface world, in caverns that had never known the touch of anything but stone and silence, something miraculous occurred. From nowhere and from nothing, fire ignited, not a small flame, not a gentle spark, but a conflagration of immense proportion. This was the first flame, and with its birth, the world learned what it meant to change. Pulse of fire brought disparity. Where once there had been only gray, now there was heat and cold. Where emptiness had reigned, now there was light and dark. Most profound of aught, the flame birthed death, the concepts of life and death. Things could now begin, things could now end. The eternal stagnation shattered, and time itself began to flow. From the darkness surrounding the flame emerged those hollow beings who had wandered purposelessly through the age of ancients. Drawn by the fire's warmth, they descended into the depths where the flame burned. Within the kiln of this primordial fire, they discovered something extraordinary. Souls. Not the pale, weak souls that would later populate the world, but Lord souls. Fragments of power so immense they could reshape reality itself. 4 beings claimed these souls, and in doing so became the first true individuals the world had known. The first was Anor. His Lord soul transformed him into the administrator of death itself. Where once nothing could die, now all things would eventually return to dust. His form became a grotesque amalgamation of skeletons, countless bones held together by the power of his soul. He was the first of the dead, the original being to experience what it meant for life to cease. The description of his soul speaks plainly of his purpose. He administers the death of all manner of beings, maintaining the balance that allows life to have meaning. Without death, life becomes meaningless. Without ending, there can be no beginning. Anor embodied this truth, and from his tomb in the deepest catacombs, he would watch over the natural order. The second Lord Soul was claimed by the Witch of Izalith and divided among her 7 daughters. Together, they became masters of heat and flame, wielding fire sorceries of devastating power. These flame witches would build a civilization in the blazing city of Izalith, a kingdom of fire where their power reigned supreme. The witch's soul granted dominion over the very essence of combustion, allowing her and her daughters to weave firestorms that could incinerate entire landscapes. The third soul fell to Gwyn, who would become known in the Lord of Sunlight. When he discovered the Lord Soul, his legion of knights stood beside him, suggesting he held some measure of authority even before obtaining this immense power. The soul granted him command over lightning, bolts of pure electrical fury that he could hurl with devastating accuracy. His knights stood ready to follow him into whatever battles lay ahead, sworn to serve the god who would reshape the world. The fourth and final Lord Soul was different from the others. Where the first 3 blazed with power and light, This soul was small, dark, and easily overlooked. It was claimed by the furtive Pygmy, described as a primeth human, the progenitor of all humanity to come. This was the dark soul, distinctly unlike the brilliant Lord souls claimed by the others. The Pygmy understood something the others did not. This soul could be fragmented, divided into countless pieces, each one retaining a measure of its power. From these fragments, humanity itself was born. Humanity, that black sprite, remains mysterious even to those who possess it. Item descriptions question its nature, asking what distinguishes the humanity within from the souls that grant type to all beings. The answer reveals a fundamental truth about the world's hierarchy. Every creature, from the Might Night Lord to the lowest Neman, possesses a soul, but only humans possess both soul and humanity. This dual nature grants humans a unique identity, separating them from other forms of existence. The gods, those who claim the bright Lord souls, derive their power from the first flame itself. As the flame burns, so too does their might flourish. But humanity draws strength from a different source. It is fueled by willpower, by perseverance, by the refusal to surrender. When a human consumes humanity, they reverse the hollowing that threatens to strip away their identity. The power of humanity is subtle, grows stronger through determination rather than raw force. This understated nature caused the lords to overlook its potential. They sought immediate, quantifiable power. They could not comprehend strength that grew through struggle. The furtive Pygmy passed this gift of humanity down through generations, shaping the descendants into what would become the human race. Many scholars theorize that the Pygmy was, in fact, Manus, who would later be known as the father of the abyss. If this theory holds truth, then Manus raised humanity in the depths of the abyss itself, a realm of pure darkness. This realm, this abyss, could only be inhabited by humans. Beings aligned with fire, including the gods themselves, risked corruption if they ventured into its depths. Without specific protection, they would be consumed, both physically and spiritually, by the encroaching darkness. This fundamental difference established humanity's relationship with the dark. Humans found comfort in shadows, drew strength from the absence of light. The lords concertly required the flame. Their power depended upon its continued burning. That divergence would shape all the conflicts to come. Pause now possessing the might of Lords and the Witch of Izalith, and Gwyn recognized they no longer needed to exist beneath the dragon's rule. The Age of Ancients had given way to the Age of Fire, and in the New Age, the dragons were relics of a bygone era. Together, the three lords made a decision that would ebb through the ages. They would wage war against the dragons, overthrow their timeless dominion, and claim the surface world for themselves. Preparations began. Gwyn assembled his knights, the greatest warriors to adorn armor. 4 among them stood above all others, paragons of martial prowess who would become legend. Knight Artorias commanded Lord Gwyn army. His wolf ring bore testimony to his character, speaking of his unbendable will of steel and his unmatched skill with a greatsword. Artorias harbored a deep hatred for servants of the dark, particularly the dark wraiths who would later plague Anor Londo. This hatred would eventually lead him to the abyss itself, and to a fate both tragic and heroic. Hawkeye Goff led the great archers, warriors who wielded bows of enormous size. His skill with these weapons was legendary, allowing him to strike down high-flying dragons from impossible distances. While the other knights battled on the ground, Goff's arrows would pierce the sky, sending dragons spiraling downward where they could be finished by Artorias and his soldiers. Dragon Slayer Ornstein served as captain of the 4 knights. His armor description confirms his leadership role, and his prowess with a spear would become the stuff of legend. In later ages, warriors would study his techniques, seeking to emulate the deadly grace with which he struck down dragons. The final knight was Lord's Blade Kieran, a master of assassination, who wielded a dagger to eliminate Gwyn's enemies. The Hornet Ring speaks of her deadly proficiency, noting that her kills served dead warnings to others, inspiring both fear and respect for the gods. Among the 4, she was the Shadow, the blade in the darkness. Yet these famous knights were not the only warriors to fight in the war. Humans joined the battle laid ringing knights, fighting at the god's command. The dragon head shield reveals that these knights stood among the ranks who set out to slay the dragons, yet their contributions were never lauded. Their involvement was kept secret, their sacrifices unacknowledged. They forged armor and weapons in the abyss itself, equipment that bore traces of the dark soul within them. This presence of darkness, this smidgen of life, terrified the gods. They saw in humanity's power a threat to their reign, for humanity's existence actively conflicted with the Age of Fire. History, it seems, was written by the victors. For many ages, scholars believed they knew who fought in the Dragon War. But time eventually reveals old truths, and a revelation came that shook the foundations of established knowledge. There was another warrior, one whose deeds had been deliberately erased from every record, every monument, every prayer. Gwyn, firstborn son, later known only under the name as King, fought in the war against the dragons. The Ring of the Sun Firstborn reveals that he was once a god of war, a title speaking to his martial mastery. He was called a deific hunter of dragons, suggesting skills that surpassed even the four knights. How then did such a celebrated warrior have his very name stripped from history? The answer lies in betrayal. After the war, after the dragons had been defeated, the name-make king made a choice that would damn him for all time. He allied himself with the ancient dragons, the very beasts he had helped to destroy. He tamed a storm drake and led a lifetime of battle atop its back, turning against his father and he had once held dear. For this transgression, Gwyn erased his son's existence. All accolades were stripped away. All monuments bearing his name were defaced. The once revered and respected warrior became nothing more than a name-met phantom, a cautionary tale whispered in forgotten corners. The dragons faced one final betrayal, one that would seal their fate. Seath the Scalelate, a dragon born without the stone scales that granted immortality, sided with the lords. Envy and resentment drove him to this choice, for he had lived as an outcast among his own kind. Gwyn offered him control over the archives, a repository of precious tomes and letters. For a being obsessed with knowledge and sorcery, this prize proved irresistible. Seath brought with him crucial information about the dragon's weakness to lightning, and he wielded powerful soul arrows that could pierce their scales where other weapons failed. The war raged across the surface world. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters wove firestorms that scorched the land, reducing vast swaths of territory to cinders. Gwyn lightning bolts peeled apart stone scales, rendering the dragons vulnerable for the first time in their eternal existence. And that unleashed miasma of death and disease, poisoning the very air the dragons breathed. And through it, the knights and ringing knights fought with unwavering determination. One by one, the everlasting dragons fell. Though they were not driven to extinction, their numbers dwindled catastrophically. Their reign ended, and with it, the Age of Ancients became nothing more than memory. The Age of Fire had truly begun, and the Lords stood to the undisputed rulers of the world. Pause following their victory, the Lords divided the world among themselves, and Nut descended into the catacombs, taking up residence in the tomb of the giants. From this sepulchre, he continued his duty of administering death to all living things. Those who worshipped the Gravelord traveled to his tomb, becoming Gravelord servants. These devotees used eyes of death to spread disaster across neighboring worlds, luring victims back to the tomb where they would be slain, their eyes harvested for Nino's purposes. The Gravelord's sword dance miracle confirms that Nino sleeps deep within the giant catacombs, quietly overseeing all death, waiting for his servants to deliver the eyes of death. Gwyn established his kingdom in Anor Londo, a magnificent city that stood a testament to the god's might. He ruled alongside his clan, and together they continued hunting the descendants of dragons, ensuring that the ancient beasts could never again threaten their sovereignty. Gwyn was generous with his rewards, at least to those who had fought openly at his side. Seath received his promised dukedom and control of the archives, where he could pursue his obsession with sorcery and immortality. But for humanity, Gwyn's gratitude proved to be deception. The small envoy banner reveals the truth of the gift he gave to the Pygmies. He offered them the Ring-Wing City, describing it in an isolated place at World's End. He sent his beloved youngest daughter, Filianori, promising to return for her when the time was right. The reality was far darker. Gwyn's true intention was to isolate humanity at the edge of the world, trapping them in a place where time itself would cease to flow. Filianori would ensure they remained suspended in the past, forgotten by the world that moved forward without them. The Ring-Wing Knight set reveals another aspect of Gwyn's fear. Human armor was forged in the abyss, and it bore a smidgen of life, that spark of humanity within each Pygmy. This power, drawn from the dark soul, could only be wielded by humans. It represented a source of strength that existed independently of the first flame, a power the gods could not control or comprehend. In their fear, the gods cast a seal of fire upon the Ring-Wing Knights and of humanity. This seal became known as the Dark Sign. The Dark Sign description speaks plainly of its nature. It signifies an accursed undead. Those branded with it are reborn after death, but will one day lose their minds and go hollow. This curse was Gwyn's solution to the threat of humanity. By preventing humans from accessing their full potential, by ensuring they would eventually lose themselves to hollowing, he sought to maintain the Age of Fire indefinitely. This decision would have consequences far beyond what Gwyn could have anticipated. But for now, the world belonged to the gods, and they celebrated their victory without understanding the price they would eventually pay. Havel the Rock, an old battlefield compatriot of Gwyn, despised Seath the Scalelay. The great magic barrier miracle reveals that Havel was a sworn enemy of the Pale Dragon, a hatred stemming from his deep distrust of magic. He created miracles specifically to counter sorcery, determined to resist Seath's power should they come to blows. Havel wielded a dragon tooth, presumably taken from one of the fallen dragons, and wore armor carved from solid rock. The tremendous weight of this armor was matched only by the defense it provided, earning him his moniker. Despite years of loyal service to Gwyn, Havel found himself imprisoned in the basement of a watchtower. The watchtower basement key speaks of rumors of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend for his own good. The narrative appears to be Gwyn's justification, a convenient explanation for the imprisonment of someone who had begun to question his decisions. The true ruse may have been Havel's plan to confront Seath, or perhaps his involvement in the occult rebellion. An occult club found near his armor in Anor Londo suggests a connection to those who plotted against the gods. Occult weapons were designed to hunt the gods and were effective against their followers. Whether Havel truly conspired against Gwyn, or whether Seath fabricated evidence to eliminate a threat, remains unclear. What is certain is that Havel rotted in his cell for years, eventually losing his sanity and succumbing to the very hollowing Gwyn claimed to protect him from. Years passed. Decades became centuries. The first flame, which had burned so brightly at the Age of Fire's dawn, began to fade. The gods felt their power waning and the flame's light diminished. Gwyn and the other lords grew desperate, searching for a solution to maintain their reign. The world faced a choice: accept the coming darkness or fight to keep the flame alive. The Witch of Izalith, who had settled with her daughters in the burning city of Izalith, was summoned by Gwyn. He requested that she recreate the first flame, to generate a new source of power that could replace the fading original. The witch agreed, confident in her mastery over flame and heat. She possessed a lord's soul after all. Surely she could accomplish this task. In Izalith, the witch and her daughters worked their greatest sorcery. They attempted to birth a new flame from the power of the witch's soul. At first it seemed to work. Fire ignited, grow larger and hotter. But something went terribly wrong. The flame grew uncontrollably, feeding on everything around it. The witch and her daughters could not restrain it. The fire twisted, becoming something perverse and wrong. This was not the clean, life-giving flame they had intended to create. This was the chaos flame, and it would be denied. The flame consumed the Witch of Izalith, using her lord's soul as fuel and transforming her body into a seedbed. She became the bed of chaos, a twisted amalgamation of flame and flesh from which demons would be born. The citizens of Izalith were mutated into monstrous forms, their bodies warped by the chaotic energies unleashed by the witch's failed experiment. The beautiful city of flame became Lost Izalith, a hellish landscape where demons would reign. Among those transformed were the witch's own daughters. Chaos Witch Quelag became part spider, part human, a monster with devastating pyromantic abilities. Her younger sister, the Fair Lady, was spared the worst of the physical mutations but lost her sight. The eldest daughter survived to guard the entrance to the bed of chaos. Only Quelana, who had fled the city before the worst occurred, escaped with her humanity intact. Quelag and the Fair Lady relocated, taking their servants with them. These servants suffered from a parasitic disease, their bodies infested with egg-bearing worms. In an act of profound compassion, the Fair Lady chose to suck the blight from her servants, drawing the infection into herself. This sacrifice saved them but cost her dearly. She became weakened, her sight stolen by the very affliction she had absorbed. Quelag remained at her sister's side, fiercely protective of the own family she had left. Deep in the demon ruins lingered Seath, discharged, the only son of the Witch of Izalith. He had it born with sores inflamed by lava, suffering from the moment of his birth. His sisters had enchanted a ring to ease his pain, the orange charred ring providing some small comfort. When the chaos flame was born, he transformed into a massive demon, becoming the first of his kind. He stood watch over what he believed to be his sister Quelana's corpse, guarding her clothing and refusing to leave. He would stand vigil for centuries, alone with his grief, unaware that Quelana still lived. Gwyn dispatched his Black Knights to eliminate the demons of Izalith. The Black Knight shield confirms that these knights faced the Chaos demons and were charred black by the terrible flames. Despite their legendary prowess, the Black Knights could not overcome the demon horde. The situation grew dire that the first flame continued its inexorable fade. Seeing no other option, Gwyn made a decision that would last through all the ages to come. He would link the first flame himself, sacrificing his own soul to keep it burning. Before departing on the final journey, he divided his Lord's soul, gifting fragments to those he trusted. His children received portions of his power. The 4 kings of Anor Londo, who had shown great wisdom and leadership, received soul fragments. Seath, the Scale Lad, still favored by the gods, was given a piece as well. The Silver Knight set reveals that when Gwyn departed to link the flame, his knights split into 2 groups. The Silver Knights remained in Anor Londo, guarding the city and serving Princess Guinevere in her father's absence. The Black Knights followed Gwyn to the kiln of the first flame, determined to stand by their lord until the end. Gwyn entered the kiln with his great sword as his only companion. There, at the heart of the first flame, he sacrificed himself. The fire consumed him, reducing the mighty Lord of Sunlight to little more than cinders. The Black Knights who had accompanied him were burned to ashes in the newly kindled flame, doomed to wander the world as disembodied spirits forever after. The flame was relit, and the Age of Fire was extended. But the victory came at a terrible cost. By artificially prolonging the Age of Fire, by refusing to let nature take its course, Gwyn committed what would later be called the first sin. For the curse of the undead was born from Gwyn's transgression. The dark sign that the gods had branded upon humanity now took on new significance. Those who died would reawaken at bonfires, trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. Each time they died, they lost a little more of themselves. Eventually, they would hollow, becoming mind-dead creatures driven only by base instincts. Once hollowed, death became permanent. There was no coming back from that final transformation. This curse was the world's way of correcting the gods' interference. The natural order demanded that the Age of Fire give way to the Age of Dark. Just the day must yield to night. By linking the flame, Gwyn had disrupted this cycle, creating an artificial state of existence that could not last. The Undead Curse was nature's rebellion, an attempt to force the transition that Gwyn had prevented. King Seeker Frampt, a primordial serpent, appeared to guide the undead. He sought those who might follow in Gwyn's footsteps, individuals who could be persuaded to sacrifice themselves to the flame and extend the Age of Fire yet again. The gods did everything in their power to maintain their reign. They built asylums to contain the undead, hoping that from among these cursed beings, a chosen one might emerge. The cycle was set in motion. The Age of Fire could never truly end as long as the undead continued to link the flame. But the Age of Dark could never fully begin either, for there were always those willing to sacrifice themselves to keep the light alive. The world existed in a paradoxical state, caught between two impossible futures, condemned to repeat the same pattern until either the flame or the dark finally triumpheth once and for all. In the words of Darkstalker Cathay, another primordial serpent who opposed Francis' designs, the furtive Pygmy had waited for the fire to subside, but that never occurred. The Age of Dark that should have followed the Age of Fire was denied, postponed indefinitely by Gwyn's desperate act. The question remained, could the cycle be broken? Or was the world doomed to repeat this struggle between light and dark, fire and abyss, until everything finally crumbled into dust? Pause from within the Northern Undead Asylum, a prison where the cursed were left to rot. A new champion awakened. The Chosen Undead, as this individual would come to be known, found themselves locked in a cell with no memory of how they had arrived. Above, through a hole in the ceiling, a corpse fell, dropped by a mysterious figure who departed without a word. The corpse bore a dungeon cell key, allowing escape from the immediate confinement. The Undead Asylum second floor east key revealed the asylum's true nature. It was a giant prison, segmented by countless iron bars, designed so that even if an undead escaped from a cell, they would find passage to the outside world nearly impossible. The asylum served as more than just a prison. It was a proving ground, a place to test which undead might possess the strength to embark on the journey ahead. The mysterious figure who had dropped the key was Oscar, Knight of Astora. The Chosen Undead found him dying, apparently hurled through the roof during a battle with the asylum's guardian. Oscar spoke of a prophecy, an ancient legend that told of an undead who would undertake a pilgrimage to ring the bells of awakening. This journey would take place near the end of the Age of Fire and would determine the fate of the world. Oscar had traveled from Astora, a distant land known for its brave knights and skilled craftsmen, to fulfill this prophecy himself. But his wounds were mortal, and he knew his journey had ended before it could truly begin. He passed his mission to the Chosen Undead, briding an Estus flask to aid in the trials ahead. Estus flasks were treasures for the undead, capable of healing wounds when filled at bonfires. The Chosen Undead ventured deeper into the asylum, eventually confronting its guardian, the asylum demon. This creature was wisely born from the chaos flame that had consumed Izalith. Its demon's great hammer confirmed it was among the lesser ranks of demons, a hint that greater challenges awaited beyond the asylum's walls. The demon served as a final test and a blockade, preventing unworthy undead from escaping. Oscar had fought this demon and lost. The Chosen Undead succeeded where the noble knight had failed. Defeating the asylum demon granted the Big Pilgrim's Key, allowing escape from the prison. Beyond the asylum walls waited a giant crow, one of many rather that served as messengers between the asylum and the outside world. The crow carried the Chosen Undead to Lordran, land of ancient lords, delivering them to Firelink Shrine. At Firelink Shrine, a place of respite for weary travelers, the Chosen Undead encountered the crestfallen warrior. This person had clearly undertaken the undead pilgrimage at some point, for they knew of the bells of awakening. The first bell, they explained, rested above the undead church. The second lay deep in the ruins of Blighttown. But the warrior's posture and tone revealed the truth. They had failed to ring the bells, and the repeated deaths and disappointments had broken their spirit. They lingered at Firelink Shrine without purpose, watching others pass by while having given up on their own journey. The crestfallen warrior mentioned another occupant of Firelink Shrine, the firekeeper named Anastasia of Astora. She was bound to the shrine's bonfire, maintaining its flame through her silent devotion. Her tongue had cut out, likely as punishment for speaking a god's name in vain. The maiden set she wore was blood-stained, and its description suggested she had been maimed to prevent escape. What crime had warranted such cruel punishment remained a mystery. though it was clear Anastasia had suffered greatly. The path forward led through the Undead Burg, where the Chosen Undead encountered another demon, the Taurus demon. This minotaur-like creature wielded a great axe carved from demon bones. Its description confirmed it too was among the lesser demons, a realization that both encouraged and unnerved. If these were the inferior demons, what horrors awaited deeper in Lordran? In the Undead Burg, the Chosen Undead met Solaire of Astora, a knight devoted to the Lord of Sunlight. Solaire had come to Lordran seeking his very own son, a quest that seemed both metaphorical and literal. His armor of the sun bore a holy symbol painted by his own hand, and his faith in finding his son remained unwavering. Solaire offered his aid should it be needed, sensing that their fates were somehow intertwined. He spoke of how time flowed strangely in Lordran, with heroes from different eras phasing in and out of existence. Deeper in the lower Undead Burg, the Chosen Undead freed Griggs of Vinheim, a sorcerer trapped in a locked room. Vinheim was known for its dragon school, an institution that taught sorcery, and was rumored to have been named after Seath the Scaly. Griggs wore the black sorcerer set, identifying him as one of the school's secret sorcerers. He possessed the Great Soul Arrow spell, which marked an apprentice's graduation to full sorcerer status. Griggs's primary goal was to find his master Big Hat Logan, though whether they would reunite depended on choices yet to be made. The Capra demon awaited in the lower Undead Burg, another spawn of the Chaos Flame. This demon wielded a great machete and commanded dogs that harried intruders. Beyond this challenge lay the path to the Undead Parish and the location of the first Bell of Awakening. At the top of the Undead Parish, the Chosen Undead could free Knight Lautrec of Karim from his cell. Lautrec was devoted to Fina, a goddess of fateful beauty, and believed deeply in her love for him. Whether their love was reciprocated or merely a delusion remained uncertain. Lautrec would later prove to have sinister intentions, but for now, he offered thanks for his freedom and departed. The Bell Gargoyles defended the rooftop where the first bell hung. These stone creatures were formidable opponents, but the Chosen Undead prevailed. The first bell rang out across Lordran, its toll marking the completion of the first stage of the Undead pilgrimage. Below the parish, Oswald of Karim offered absolution for sins. This partner warned cryptically about Petrus of Thorolud, suggesting the cleric was drenched in sin despite his holy appearance. This warning would prove prescient. Pause. The journey to the second bell led through various paths, each revealing more about Lordran's tragic history. In Darkroot Garden, the Chosen Undead encountered Alvina of the Darkroot Wood, a mystical cat who commanded the Forest Hunter Covenant. She protected the forest graves from defilers, and her connection to Knight Artorias remained mysterious. Alvina would later reveal that Artorias' legend was merely a fabrication, a statement that seemed impossible given the knight's fame. The Moonlight Butterfly, one of Seath's creations, guarded the forest. That beautiful creature was imbued with pure magical power, befitting something crafted by the grandfather of sorcery. Despite its magical prowess, it possessed little physical strength and fell relatively easily. In the depths below the Undead Burg, the Chosen Undead freed Laurentius of the Great Swamp, finding him trapped in a barrel. Laurentius came from a land of rugged grasslands and treacherous swamps where pyromancy was practiced widely. He would later teach pyromancy to the Chosen Undead, but his story could end tragically if he learned of more powerful flames existing in Blighttown. The Gaping Dragon lurked in the depths, a distant deformed descendant of the Everlasting Dragons. The first flame's ignition had transformed it into an inferior version of its ancestors, a grotesque mockery of what dragons once were. Blighttown, a decrepit city built in the depths, held the path to the second bell. In this poisonous place, Gwyn of Izalith could be found, the only daughter of the Witch of Izalith to have escaped the Chaos Flame unchanged. She had fled Izalith believing her mother and sisters dead, unaware they had survived in mutated forms. Gwyn had become the creator of pyromancy, developing a safer alternative to the fire sorceries that had destroyed her home. She taught her art to Solomon, who passed it to the people of the Great Swamp. Quilana begged the Chosen Undead to free the consumed souls of her family by slaying what remained of their corrupted bodies. She did not know that her mother and sisters retained some measure of consciousness, that they were not minded monsters but aware beings trapped in demonic forms. At the heart of Blighttown's swamp, Chaos Witch Quelag defended her sister. She had become part spider, part human, her lower body transformed into that of a massive arachnid. Despite her monstrous appearance, Quelag retained her sanity and her devotion to protecting the fair lady. She attacked not out of malice but out of desperation, for any threat to her could mean harm to her sister. Behind an illusionary wall, the fair lady tended her bonfire, unable to see and barely able to move. If the Chosen Undead wore the old witch's ring, they could understand her words. She would mistake them for Quelag, expressing happiness at her sister's presence even as she suffered. Her voice quivered with uncertainty, questioning whether Quelag truly remained at her side. The truth was darker than she knew. Eventually, the fair lady would die alone, clutching her sister Quilana pyromancy tome, waiting for a reunion that would never come. The second bell of awakening rang from deep within Blighttown, its toll completing the prophecy's requirement. The gates of Sensen Fortress opened, granting access to Anor Londo. Sensen Fortress was a proving ground, a gauntlet designed to test those who deemed themselves worthy of entering the city of gods. Traps, armed serpentine guards, Titanite demons, and environmental hazards filled the stone fort. The Chosen Undead encountered Siegmeyer of Katarina E., an honorable knight who found himself repeatedly stalled by the fortress's challenges. Big Hat Logan would be found trapped in a cage, Ike caught by one of the fortress's mechanisms. Freeing him allowed the renowned sorcerer to continue his journey, though his ultimate destination would prove to be his doom. Logan was a royal member of the Vinheim Dragon School, creator of the Soul Spear spell, a symbol of his strength that was said to be on par with Lord Gwyn's lightning. Despite his immense power and prestige, Logan still wore his worn sage robe from his apprentice days, a testament to his humility. Rickard of Vinheim would later reveal that Logan had been undead for over a century, suggesting his curse had driven him from his homeland long gone. The Iron Golem served as the final guardian of Sensen Fortress, a massive construct animated by the code of an everlasting dragon and bone. This slayer of heroes had ended countless pilgrimages, but one warrior had succeeded in defeating it, Black Iron Tarkus, a knight of Berenike. Tarkus was known for his great strength. Edward E. Knights of Berenike, warriors who wore heavy armor and wielded greatswords with devastating effect. Most of these knights had become undead and turned hollow in Lordran, but Tarkus had persevered further than any of his comrades. He offered his aid to those challenging the Iron Golem, a display of virtue that honored his knightly vows. Defeating the Iron Golem granted passage to Anor Londo via Batwing demons, who carried travelers to the city gates. The city itself stood as testament to the god's former glory, its magnificent architecture preserved despite having been abandoned for over 1,000 years. This preservation seemed impossible through natural means, suggesting something unnatural maintained Anor Londo's appearance. Silver Knights patrolled the city, still serving their goddess Guinevere at Gwyn had commanded centuries ago. Royal sentinels and regular sentinels guarded key locations, becoming hostile if boundaries were overstepped. The Batwing demons, unique among chaos demons for being imbued with lightning, suggested Gwyn alliance with demonkind extend beyond simple warfare. The architecture revealed that Anor Londo had been built to accommodate both gods and humans, with varying sizes of doors, stairs, and pathways indicating a more diverse population than legends suggested. At a bonfire, the Chosen Undead met the Dark Moon Knightess, a firekeeper who served as guide and gatekeeper. She appeared to originate from Karim, based on her choice of a parrying dagger, a favorite weapon of Karim's knights. Little L was known about her at this stage, though her devotion would later prove absolute. In the Hall of the Painting Guardians, the corpse of Black Iron Tarkus lay silent. The honorable knight who had defeated the Iron Golem had apparently fallen from the narrow rafters or through one of the windows, dying alone in a place no one would think to search. A pitiful end for such a decorated warrior. Siegmeyer required rescue once again, this time from a room full of silver knights. The Chosen Undead cleared the threat, but Siegmeyer's gratitude carried an edge of frustration. He requested that next time he be given a chance to develop his own man. The proud knight's honor was being eroded by repeated rescues, though he could not bring himself to refuse aid when it was offered. The Grand Cathedral housed the greatest challenge yet: Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smo. Ornstein, captain of the four knights, had remained in Anor Londo to guard Princess Guinevere alongside Smo. Executioner Smo had desired to become one of Gwyn's knights, but his disturbing behavior prevented his acceptance. Smo's hammer revealed that he loved his work and ground the bones of his victims into his own feed, a cannibalistic tendency that marked him and too savage for the honor he sought. This difference in character showed during battle. If Ornstein fell first, Smo would crush his cod-red body without ceremony to absorb his power. But if Smo died first, Ornstein would place his hand respectfully on his fallen companion before absorbing his strength. One had honor, the other had own hunger. Upon their defeat, Princess Guinevere revealed herself in her radiant glory. She spoke of the Chosen Undead's duty to succeed her father Gwyn and inherit the fire of their world. The Age of Fire was ending, she explained, and without someone to link the flame, the world would descend into a frigid and frightful dark. She bestowed the Lord Vessel, a sacred chalice that would open the final door once filled with powerful souls, the souls of Nito, the Witch of Izalith, Seath the Scaleleth, and the four kings were required to complete this task. But something seemed wrong. The city was too perfect, too unchanged despite centuries of abandonment. Guinevere herself seemed almost ethereal, her presence lacking weight and substance. Investigation revealed the shocking truth. El of Anor Londo was an elaborate illusion. Dark son Gwyndolin, Gwyn's last-born child, had created this grand deception. The Moonlight Robub explained that Gwyndolin was raised as a daughter due to the power of the moon being strong within him. Gwyn, as Lord of Sunlight, apparently viewed the moon and those associated with it as inferior. The moon was also a reminder of the inevitable Age of Dark, the very thing Gwyn had sacrificed himself to prevent. Gwyndolin led the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant, dedicated to punishing those who sinned against the gods. Members of this covenant took the ears of their victims as proof of conquest, leaving earlay corpses as warnings that inspired both fear and respect. The Dark Moon Blade Covenant ring revealed that Gwyndolin, aware of his repulsive, frail appearance, had created the illusion of his sister Guinevere to help him guard Anor Londo. An unmasking of these deeds would be tantamount to blasphemy. If the Chosen Undead destroyed Guinevere's illusion, the city darkened, revealing its true state. Dark Moon soldiers would be deployed to hunt the blasphemer. Alternatively, one could deceive Gwyndolin by joining the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant using the Dark Moon Seance ring, then betray him by entering his sanctum and striking him down. Gwyndolin's death revealed another layer of deception. Many years later, it would become known that the Gwyndolin slain in his tomb was itself an illusion. The real Gwyndolin would eventually be devoured by Aldrich, the Saint of the Deep. The Master of Illusions had been nothing more than an illusion himself. Killing Gwyndolin caused the Dark Moon Knightess to become hostile. The brass set explained that she had become undead, visited Gwyndolin at the Mausoleum of the Spiral Depths, became a Blade of the Dark Moon, and assumed flame-keeping duty. She received armor that hid her form and helped her hunt the guilty. To her, the Chosen Undead was now the guilty, having committed the ultimate sin of slaying her god. The illusion's revelation raised questions about everything witnessed in Anor Londo. Ornstein's armor initially stated he had remained in the Grand Cathedral, but later descriptions of the Dragon Slayer set revealed that in the Dragonless Age, the knight who had long guarded the ruined cathedral left the land in search of the nameless king. This suggested the Ornstein fought in the cathedral was another of Gwyndolin's creations. Smo might also have been an illusion. Later descriptions of Smuff armor referred to him as the last knight to stand in defense of the ruined cathedral, suggesting he earned the rank of knight after Ornstein's departure. How could he have been promoted if he had been slain? The truth about Ornstein's fate remained mysterious. One theory suggested he departed to reunite with the nameless king, his former master who had trained the four knights before his banishment. Their similar combat styles and weapon choices supported this theory. However, the discovery of Ornstein's armor in Archdragon Peak suggested the reunion, if it occurred, ended in his death. Perhaps the Nameth King had turned hollow and could no longer distinguish friend from foe, or perhaps Ornstein had gone to hunt his former master and failed. In the Grand Cathedral, 3 alcoves held statues. 2 depicted Gwyn and his daughter Guinevere. The third was empty, its contents removed. The Sunlight Altar, though destroyed, had once depicted the fallen god of war. Even after his banishment, some still worshipped Gwyn's firstborn son, keeping his memory alive despite the official erasure of his existence. Pause within Anor Londo existed another world entirely, the painted world of Ariamis. The painting guardians had protected that great painting for ages, passing their duty through generations, though the reason for doing so had passed from all memory long gone. The painted world was created as a refuge for lost souls, beings without purpose or home who wandered aimlessly through Lordran. As word spread of this sanctuary, countless creatures sought entrance to the painted world. Some believed the world's true purpose was to hide crossbreed Priscilla, a being neither god nor human. Priscilla was described to a dragon crossbreed, suggesting she was a bastard child of Seath the Scaleleaf. She wielded the life-hunt scythe, a weapon so powerful it terrified the gods. The scythe could not be wielded by mortals, for in their hands its power would turn upon the wielder, inflicting bleed damage that drained life. Only beings of immense strength could bear such a burden. To access the painted world, one needed a peculiar doll. This doll description revealed its sad history, speaking of an abomination who had no place in the world and clutched the doll tightly before being drawn into the cold and lonely painted world. To obtain the doll, the Chosen Undead had to return to the Northern Undead Asylum. The asylum now hosted a stray demon in place of the original guardian. More importantly, Oscar, Knight of Astora, could be found within. The noble warrior who had freed the Chosen Undead and set them on their path had turned hollow. Unable to escape the asylum, unable to overcome even the first obstacle of his journey, Oscar had lost his sense of self. The Chosen Undead was forced to end the suffering of the one who had given them purpose, a cruel irony that demonstrated how easily even the noblest could fall. The peculiar doll allowed entry into the painted world of Ariamis. This world was strongly associated with Velka, goddess of sin, a rogue deity who defined sin and administered punishment accordingly. She offered absolution through her partners of Oswald of Karim. Throughout the painted world, items connected to Velka could be found: the black Clara robob worn by her partners, Velka's rapier used by her clerics, and references to her sacrificial rites in the Ring of Sacrifice. The Vow of Silence miracle revealed that Velka was versed in arts both new and old, and was considered to have great influence even among gods. Crow demons surrounded a dark ember located on a petrified blacksmith corpse. Dark embers were used to ascend occult weapons, and since crows were symbols of Velka, this suggested the goddess had been involved with the occult rebellion. Her designation as a rogue deity stemmed from this betrayal. To prevent future rebellions, the church had hidden the forbidden black ember, ensuring no living blacksmith knew of it. At the end of a partially destroyed bridge, crossbreed Priscilla awaited. Unlike most bosses, she remained non-hostile, offering the Chosen Undead a chance to leave peacefully. She spoke gently, insisting the van was peaceful and its inhabitants kind, though the residents had attacked relentlessly during the journey to reach her. Perhaps they fought to protect Priscilla, seeing the outsider as a threat to their guardian. Priscilla pleaded for the Chosen Undead to depart, asking why they could not let her world be, whether they could not see why Ariamis had created this place. Her words were earnest, her concern genuine. She had lived in solitude for centuries, confining herself to the tower, believing her world still served its original purpose of providing sanctuary. The choice belonged to the Chosen Undead. Would they destroy the painted world that had protected the outcast for so long, or would they leave the residents in peace, acknowledging that what transpired in the painting was what their concern? In the end, it did not matter. The world of Ariamis would eventually rot, and another painter would be chosen to create a new world. All residents of the old world would perish, Priscilla presumably among them. What became of Ariamus himself remained unknown, that he likely rotted away with the very world he had painted. With the Lord vessel obtained, the chosen undead could continue gathering the Lord's souls. At Firelink Shrine, a primordial serpent named King Seeker Frampt emerged from the depths. He instructed the chosen undead in their next task to acquire souls commensurate with Gwyn's great soul. Graveler Neo, the Witch of Izalith, the 4 kings who inherited shards of Gwyn's soul, and Seath the Scaleless all needed to be defeated. Their souls would satiate the Lord vessel and open the way to the kiln of the first flame. Frampt represented one path, the path of linking the fire and extending the age of gods. But another serpent offered a different choice. Darkstalker Cathay sought a dark lord who would let the flame fade and usher in the age of dark. At first glance, Frampt seemed to represent Ray, while Cathay represented darkness. But appearances could be deceiving, and the serpent's true motivations remained murky. Seath the Scaleleaf resided in the Duke's archives, a massive library elevated high above the rest of Lordran. When the chosen undead first encountered the pale dragon, he appeared invincible, immune to all harm. The chosen undead was defeated and awakened in a cell among Seath's other victims. 6-Eye Channelers had abducted countless residents of Lordran for Seath experiments. These channelers wore helms adorned with 6 eyes arranged in 2 vertical columns, compensating for Seath's blindness. Man-serpents served as guards, ensuring the test subjects could not escape, leaving the serpents on the Finhuben Mostat Ark. The Archive Tower cell key revealed that the Archive Tower had become a prison after the onset of Seath madness, suggesting his discovery of immortality had come at the cost of his sanity. The Archive Giant cell key meant that the giant cell had once imprisoned countless made dead but now held on a few key persons. These made dead had been transformed into Pasakas, grotesque creatures that populated the archives. 2 Pasakas could be found weeping in a corner, non-hostile unless attacked. When slain, they dropped soothing sunlight and bountiful sunlight, miracles belonging to Gwyn. This revealed the Pasakas had once been made dead serving the princess, explaining why a 6-Eye Channeler was stationed in the undead parish where such made dead might pass. Big Hat Logan had been captured again and imprisoned in the archives. Once freed, he delved deeper into the library, commenting that all progress demands sacrifice, and appearing to support Seath's cruel experiments if they yielded knowledge. Logan sold crystal sorceries, enhanced spells created from his newfound understand. He revealed the secret of Seath's immortality, the primordial crystal, a sacred treasure Seath had pillaged when he betrayed the dragons. Only by destroying this crystal could Seath be harmed. If a kill of Logan's sorceries were purchased, he would go mad from the knowledge he acquired. He would return to the area where Seath was first encountered, stripped of his clothing and lost to insanity. Just as Seath went mad after obtaining immortality, Logan was driven insane by his pursuit of ultimate sorcery. A woeful end for the famous sorcerer who had sought knowledge above all else. In the crystal caves beyond the archives, the chosen undead could rescue Sieglind of Katarina from a golden crystal golem. She was searching for her father Siegmeyer, continuing a quest that would end in tragedy. The caves were filled with more crystal golems and moonlight butterflies, creations of Seath that also appeared in Darkroot Basin due to his interest in Oolacile sorcery. At the heart of the cave stood the primordial crystal, the source of Seath's immortality. The pale dragon descended to protect this treasure personally, revealing how precious it was to him. The crystal had granted him the long life he had envied in the stone-scaled dragons. Without it, he was mortal once more. Destroying the crystal allowed the chosen undead to finally harm Seath. If his tail was severed, the Moonlight Greatsword would be obtained, a weapon imbued with his magic. The sword's description confirmed Seath as the grandfather of sorcery, explaining why Big Hat Logan had been so interested in him. It also hinted that Seath had pioneered sorcery specifically to help destroy his own kind, as soul arrow spells were particularly effective against dragon scales. The Vinheim Dragon School had been named in his honor, ensuring his legacy endured. With Seath slain, the chosen undead obtained the bequeathed Lord Soul Shard that Gwyn had gifted him centuries ago. Ustromabroger. If his tail was severed, the Moonlight Greatsword would be obtained. Alshota, a weapon imbued with his magic. The sword's description confirmed Seath as the grandfather of sorcery, explaining why Big Hat Logan had been so interested in him. It also hinted that Seath had pioneered sorcery specifically to help destroy his own kind, as soul arrow spells were particularly effective against dragon scales. The Vinheim Dragon School had been named in his honor, ensuring his legacy endured. With Seath slain, the Chosen Undead obtained the bequeathed Lord Soul Shard that Gwyn had gifted him centuries ago.
New Londo ruins held the next Lord Soul.
Before crossing the bridge to the ruins, a hollow in chainmail armor could be seen. This was the crestfallen warrior from Firelink Shrine, who had left to investigate the Sora Framped smell. During his search, he had turned hollow, losing his mind just as he had begun to find purpose again. Several hollows in New Londo could be seen kneeling before sunlight streaming through crevices in the ruins, their devotion to Lord Gwyn persisting even in their hollow state. Ghosts haunted the flooded city, cursed beings who could only be fought by those who had become cursed themselves through transient curses. Some ghosts held babies and wielded lightning miracles similar to Gwyn bolts. Ingward, a sealer, explained New Londo's history. The city had been sacrificed to contain the Dark Wraiths, enemies of all living things with souls. The four kings slumber in the deepest chamber of the ruins, and to reach them the floodgates needed to be opened. Ingward meant that long ago Knight Artorias had traversed the abyss, suggesting anyone seeking to enter that void should learn from him. His belief that Artorias still lived testified to how successfully the truth had been hidden. Ingward revealed that an evil serpent had dangled the Art of Life drain before the inhabitants of New Londo, corrupting them and turning them into pawns of evil. New Londo had been built as a home for the undead inspired by Anor Londo itself. The presence of Velka statues and items suggested the four kings respected the goddess of sin, strange considering she had been shunned by other gods and mostly confined to the painted world. The four kings had received soul shards from Gwyn, possibly to secure their loyalty. Gwyn may have known of brewing rebellion and sought to prevent uprising. New Londo design included mechanisms to flood the city entirely, raising questions about whether this was merely fortune or deliberate planning by Gwyn. It seemed unlikely that a city inspired by his own would be built without his consent. Despite receiving a Lord Soul Shard, the four kings were tempted by the power of the dark. The spread of darkness gave rise to the Dark Wraiths, warriors who had once been knights of the four kings. Their armor bore crow feathers, another symbol of Velka. The four kings and their knights were enticed by Darkstalker Koth words. As humans living under gods in an age that should have been theirs, could they truly be blamed for listening? The Dark Wraiths used life drain abilities, harnessing the power of the Dark Soul to consume humanity from their enemies. Every Dark Wraith belonged to a covenant led by Koth himself. This power terrified the gods, which explained why crossbreed Priscilla had been locked away in the painted world. Koth taught this ability to the Dark Wraiths and four kings, possibly learning it from Priscilla himself. Facing a significant threat, Ingward and the other sealers flooded New Londo, killing everyone within including civilians. Thousands of corpses litter the haunted ruins, evidence of the devastation. The mask of the sealer revealed that two of the three sealers had eventually forsaken their duty and abandoned New Londo. One Moin attire could be found in Blighttown, another could be seen accompanying Lautrec and Anor Londo. Ingward provided the key to the seal, allowing the Chosen Undead to drain the city and access the four kings. The key description spoke of the agonizing decision to flood New Londo, knowing countless lives and the city's robust culture would be lost. The victims now roamed to ghosts, eternally trapped in the moment of their drowning. With the Covenant of Artorias equipped, the Chosen Undead descended into the abyss to confront the four kings. The once noble rulers of New Londo fell, and Kathe appeared for the first time afterward. The serpent spoke of truth and enlightenment. It explained that after the advent of fire, the ancient lords found three souls, but the Chosen Undead's progenitor found a fourth unique soul, the Dark Soul. The ancestor who claimed this soul waited for fire to subside, and when the flames faded, the Age of Dark would begin. This was meant to be the Age of Men. However, Gwyn trembled at the dark, clinging to his Age of Fire and fearing humans and the Dark Lord who would be born among them. Gwyn resisted nature's course. By sacrificing himself to link the fire and commanding his children to shepherd humans, Gwyn had blurred the pace to prevent the Dark Lord's birth. Cathay aimed to seek the truth and right the wrongs of the past, while Frampt had lost his sense and befriended Gwyn. The Chosen Undead stood at a crossroads. Cathay urged them to destroy the fading Lord Gwyn, who had coddled Fi and resisted nature, to become the fourth Lord and usher in the Age of Dark. This was the alternate path to Frampt's vision. Artorias were at the Apton of Fire. The ancient lords found 3 souls, but the Chosen Undead's progenitor found a 4th unique soul, the Dark Soul. The ancestor who claimed this soul waited for fire to subside, and when the flames faded, the Age of Dark would begin. This was meant to be the Age of Men. However, Gwyn trembled at the dark, clinging to his Age of Fire and fearing humans and the Dark Lord who would be born among them. Gwyn resisted nature's course. By sacrificing himself to link the fire and commanding his children to shepherd humans, Gwyn had blurred the pace to prevent the Dark Lord's birth. Cathay aimed to seek the truth and right the wrongs of the past, while Frampt had lost his sense and befriended Gwyn. The Chosen Undead stood at a crossroads. Cathay urged them to destroy the fading Lord Gwyn, who had coddled Fi and resisted nature, not linking the fire to extend the Age of Gods, but letting it fade to allow the Age of Humanity to finally begin. As the catacombs led to Gravelord and Novtomb, skeletons filled this realm of death, requiring either divine weapons or the destruction of the necromancers who animated them. In these tombs, the Chosen Undead encountered trusty Patches, a mischievous swindler with particular disdain for clerics. Patches attempted to kill the Chosen Undead by flipping a bridge, then feigned ignorance and offered a soul of a lost undead the compensation. His treachery would manifest again in the Tomb of the Giants. Vamos, a skeletal blacksmith, could be found deep in the catacombs. Obsessed with his work and preferring solitude, he spoke little. The royal helm suggested he might have belonged to an ancient royal line, but Vamos would never speak of such things, keeping his secrets until death and beyond. Deeper still, a large coffin housed Pinwheel, a being with 3 heads and 6 arms. During battle, the heads appeared to gaze at each other, as though deliberating the intruder fate. Despite the ominous appearance, Pinwheel was strangely fragile and fell easily. Upon death, Pinwheel dropped either the mask of the father, mother, or child, along with the rite of kindling. The masks revealed that Pinwheel had been a necromancer who stole the power of the Gravelord and reigned over the catacombs. The 3 masks suggested Pinwheel was a combination of 3 bodies and minds, possibly a family that had fused together. One theory proposed that one family member died, and in attempting resurrection using Gravelord power, they created this morbid fusion. The surrounding books and chained skeletons, including one on an operating table, suggested interrupted experiments to separate the 3 bodies. The mask of the father raised equipment load, representing how fathers carry their families. The mask of the mother raised health, symbolizing how mothers raise family morale. The mask of the child boosted stamina recovery, reflecting a child's energetic nature. Another theory carried more weight. The effigy shield revealed that followers of the occult once attempted to steal the power of the Gravelord, the first of the dead. Pinwheel had succeeded in this theft. Perhaps Pinwheel was one of the occult rebellion's leaders, and he may have developed the rite of kindling to bolster bonfires, knowing that extending the Age of Fire would lead to more undead sacrificing themselves, creating more death for him to administer. The Way of White utilized this system in worship of Gwyn, creating a dead where Gwyn ruled light while Nito ruled death. The Way of White sought to retrieve the stolen rights, evidenced by Rhea Journey. Paladin Leroy, the first undead produced by the Way of White, assisted in slaying Pinwheel but would defend Enid, suggesting he own aided in retrieving the rite of kindling. The rites confirmed that Gwyn and Nito worked together to ensure the Age of Fire never ended. Bonfires were created with undead bones, a masterful pledge to trick humanity into fueling the Age of Fire. Perhaps this was why Pinwheel stole the rites, to prevent further kindkin and allow the fires to fade. In the Tomb of the Giants, pitch darkness reigned, filled with giant skeletons. From this cavern, Lost Izalith could be seen in the distance. Obsessians or the sick Goldie de Crop. Patches appeared again, tricking the Chosen Undead and sending them into a pit, where Rhea of Thorlin and her 2 cleric knights, Vince and Nico, were trapped. The knights had turned hollow and attacked, forcing the Chosen Undead to end them. Petrus was notably absent. Rhea, once saved, returned to the Undead Parish, her mission to obtain the rite of kindling having failed. If Patches survived, he would return to Firelink Shrine selling trinkets, including Vince and Nico with armor. He would warn about Petrus, calling him scum, and advising not to be fooled by his claims of doing good. Rhea could be found in the Undead Parish, grateful, and offering to sell miracles. If Petrus was informed of the rescue, he would express that it was a pity, that Rhea was not worth her salt without her family name. This dialogue foreshadowed tragedy. If left unchecked, Petrus would murder Rhea in the Undead Parish. If Petrus was killed after Rhea's rescue, she would survive. Alternatively, if all her items were purchased, she would be kidnapped and taken to the Duke's archives, where she would be found hollow. Her final wish had been for someone to finish her if she went hollow, and the Chosen Undead could grant this mercy. The pilgrimage she was ordained to complete had been doomed from the start. Lordran awaited in the deepest tomb. He appeared coated in humanity, a hint to his goal of absorbing undead power and working with Gwyn to suppress the human race. Like any other lord, Nide fell to the Chosen Undead. The very being who administered death to the world had died, though much of his lord's soul had already been offered to death itself. Enough remained to satiate the Lord Vessel. Many years later, the Milfadni and Fenna would continue the teachings of the Great Dead One. The Milfadnus sang to reassure the dead, while the Fenna safeguarded them, allowing peaceful slumber for those who had passed beyond life. Lost Izalith held the final Lord Soul. This once great city ruled by the Witch of Izalith had become the birthplace of demons after the witch's blasphemous attempt to recreate the first flame. The city's transformation raised questions about the demons' nature. They seemed intelligent, as though they had carved out their own civilization. Each demon had a role, working together to ensure survival and defend their mother. When involvement may have shaped events. Perhaps Izalith had been a stable demon society before Gwyn dispatched his Black Knights, initiating the Demon War. After the war concluded, Gwyn placed demons in his ranks as transporters and jailers. This raised an important question. If Gwyn had never waged war on the demons, would they have threatened his reign? A centipede-like demon could be seen stalking the Chosen Undead as they navigated Lost Izalith, foreshadowing an encounter ahead. The demon Firesage awaited deeper in the ruins, similar to the Asylum and Stray Demons. The demon Firesage had been the first demon and the last master of the original fire arts before the Witch of Izalith was engulfed by chaos, creating pyromancy. After defeating the Firesage, the Chosen Undead confronted the Centipede Demon. Upon its death, the orange charred ring was obtained. Its description revealed that Seath's discharge was a fool who had readily dropped this ring, and from that spot, a terrible centipede demon was born. This explained why the demon dropped the ring upon death. Further ahead, Solaire could be encountered, though his mind seemed distant. He questioned why, after his searching, he still could not find his son. His despair was palpable, his quest seemingly endless. The Chosen Undead would witness Solaire for the last time with a parasitic organism embedded in his brain, swinging wildly and claiming he had finally discovered his very own son. He declared himself the son, believing he had achieved his goal even in the parasite consumed his mind. The Chosen Undead had no choice but to end his suffering. Solaire's final words spoke of darkness descending ends his sunset, a tragic end to a once joyous night. An alternative existed. If the Chosen Undead became a servant of chaos, they could unlock a shortcut into Lost Izalith. Behind those doors were parasites, including the Sunlight Maggot. By claiming this maggot before Solaire encountered it, the knight could be saved from madness. The Sunlight Maggot emanated blinding light when worn, explaining why Solaire mistook it for his son. Solaire could then be found questioning whether it had been a lie, whether he had done everything for nothing, forever unaware that the Chosen Undead had saved him from a fate worse than death. Advancing further, the Chosen Undead encountered Siegmeyer again. He offered to repay his debt by fighting Chaos Eaters alone. Two choices presented themselves: slay all the Chaos Eaters before speaking with him, or allow him to fight alone. If enemies were killed first, Siegmeyer would thank the Chosen Undead but curse his own inability. If allowed to fight alone, Siegmeyer might fall, forcing the Chosen Undead to jump into the pit and assist once again. Eventually, Siegmeyer's corpse would be found on the shores of Ash Lake, his daughter Sieglinde weeping beside him. She had come to Lordran to deliver her mother the last words, and fortunately managed to do so before being forced to subdue her hollowed father. Siegmeyer's hollow state resulted from the Chosen Undead's continuous aid. Each rescue stripped away more of his purpose and honor. Unable to solve his own problems or slay any creature alone, what good was he to anyone? This dampened the morale of the Catarina Knight until his honor was no longer intact, and his worth as a knight dwindled in his own mind. Having lost his purpose and will to live, Siegmeyer became hollow, a victim not of cruelty but of kindness. The eldest daughter of Chaos defended the entrance to her mother the Lair, wielding devastating pyromancies. Her Chaos Fire Whip identified her the eldest daughter. During this fight, Kirk, the Knight of Thorns, could invade for the final time. He had invaded previously in the depths and demon ruins, consistently plaguing the Chosen Undead's journey. Kirk's corpse would later be found in Qualag's domain near the Fair Lady. His armor revealed he was a notorious member of the Dark Wraiths, described as murderous despite his devotion to the servants of Chaos. Kirk had used his strength as a Dark Wraith to pillage humanity and gift it to the Fair Lady. Why he did this remained unknown, but he clearly felt some affinity toward the Daughter of Chaos, serving her until his final moments. With the path cleared, the Chosen Undead descended into the Witch of Izalith's lair. The bed of chaos awaited, a twisted tree-like creature that bore little resemblance to the witch she had once been. 2 seeds could be seen on either side, possibly 2 of her daughters who had been closest when the chaos flame erupted. Destroying these seeds revealed the path to the Coal. Within the bed of chaos, a small parasite represented all that remained of the Witch of Izalith. The Chosen Undead destroyed this creature with a Ziz stroke, unleashing chaos that would spiral out of control for ages to come. This chaos would eventually consume the Ivory King and his loyal knights. The demon civilization, no longer maintained by the Bed of Chaos, would die out, leaving only an old demon king, the last living witness of the chaos of Izalith. With the Lord's soul's death, only Gwyn himself remained. Pause to understand the events surrounding the Abyss. One must journey back in time to ancient Oolacile, a land of sorceries that would be swallowed by darkness. The enchanted ember, described as a vestige of this lost land, suggested Oolacile had fallen to some catastrophe long before the Chosen Undead's time. During their journey through Lordran, the Chosen Undead ventured to the depths of Darkroot Basin, where a hydra and numerous crystal golems occupied the area. After slaying these creatures, a golden crystal golem could be discovered behind the hydra. Unlike the others, this particular golem housed a person within its crystallite shell. Defeating it released the captive, who could then be summoned into the Chosen Undead's world. This individual was Dusk, Princess of Oolacile. She explained that she came from an age long before the current time and could not remain in this era for long. Her home, Oolacile, was renowned for ancient sorceries, and she wished to pass this profound knowledge to the Chosen Undead. The sorceries she offered were designed for utility rather than offensive purposes, distinctly different from those used by Vinheim scholars. She spoke of how Oolacile had been reduced to ashes, though the circumstances of this destruction remained unclear. The summoning location held significance. The land of Oolacile bore striking resemblance to present-day Darkroot Basin. The royal wood particularly mirrored Darkroot Garden. This suggested that over centuries, lacking maintenance, the land had been consumed by vegetation, transforming into a dimly lit forest. Time was convoluted in Lordran, after all, and the boundaries between past and present were not as firm as in other places. With Dusk rescued, the Chosen Undead could later obtain a broken pendant from the Duke's archives, protected by yet another crystal golem. Seath may have wanted to study the pendant for its magical properties. The pendant in description spoke of a vine appearing to originate from Oolacile, with powerful magic sensed within this ancient stone. Yet men of the current time could neither manipulate nor sense its power, which held a distinct air of both reverence and nostalgia. Returning to Darkroot Basin with the pendant caused a portal to appear. Approaching this gateway resulted in something extraordinary. The hand of Manus reaching through time and space to grasp the pendant. pulling the Chosen Undead centuries into the past. What meaning this pendant held remained unknown, though it was possibly a relic of Manus's humanity, something deeply personal to the being who had become the Father of the Abyss. The first obstacle in reaching Oolacile was the Sanctuary Guardian, a white-winged lion sanctuary watchkeeper who dreaded the spread of the Abyss. Upon closer inspection, the Guardian appeared to be a hybrid of various animals. It possessed features of a lion, a goat, a scorpion-like tail, and a set of wings. This ferocious creature served as the final defense of Oolacile borders. Beyond the Guardian lay Oolacile Sanctuary, where Elizabeth resided. This giant mushroom differed from the mushroom parents discovered in the Great Hollow and Darkroot Garden. As she could not move, it possessed no limbs. Perhaps mushrooms had evolved over the centuries, or perhaps Elizabeth was unique among her kind. Elizabeth recognized the Chosen Undead scent as human, thanking them deeply for rescuing Princess Dusk. However, she explained that Dusk was no longer in the sanctuary, having been snatched away by a horrifying primitive human. She asked the Chosen Undead to play the Savior once more, confirming they had traveled through time and arrived in ancient Oolacile during its darkest hour. Elizabeth explained that an abyss had been begotten by the ancient beast and threatened to swallow all of Oolacile. Knight Artorias had come to stop this, but someone without a murmur of dark within them would inevitably be swallowed by the abyss and overcome by utter blackness. Elizabeth doubted the abyss could be stopped, though she maintained faith that Dusk might still be rescued. She also mentioned another visitor, a human from a faraway time, who was dreadfully odied and still remained somewhere in Oolacile. This confirmed the Chosen Undead was not the only person pulled through time. By the time of Drangleic, Elizabeth would be revered as a saint who devoted her life to helping the needy by concocting medicine and potions. She was described as having sublime beauty, a curious description for a mushroom. Her corpse would eventually be discovered in Farron Keep, indicating she never abandoned her duties even after Oolacile fall. Beyond the sanctuary lay the Royal Wood, where traces of the abyss could be seen spreading like an infection. Magical elevators constructed by Oolacile residents still function, and many monuments from this time period would later be found in Darkroot Garden, reinforcing that the two locations were one and the same across different eras. As the Chosen Undead navigated the forest, a large black dragon briefly landed on a bridge before flying off. This was Calamite, who would prove significant later. Nearby, Marvelous Chester could be found, matching the description Elizabeth had provided of the odied visitor. Chester confirmed he had been snatched by a shadowy limb and dragged to the past, suggesting they should help one another in this strange situation. Chester's appearance was unique among Lordran's inhabitants. He wore a black long coat and top hat with a mask, and wielded a sniper crossbow from Karim. His mannerisms suggested trustworthiness, but he would later attempt to invade the Chosen Undead's world. Even if killed during this invasion, he would still sell items afterward, though reluctantly. Chester shared crucial information about Oolacile's downfall. He explained that Oolacile had brought the abyss upon itself, fooled by a toothy serpent into upturning the grave of primeval man and inciting his wrathful response. The toothy serpent was almost certainly Darkstalker Koth, an advocate for the dark who had manipulated numerous civilizations over the centuries. Anor Londo had fallen due to Koth's involvement, and Oolacile suffered a similar fate. Koth had manipulated Oolacile people for his own purposes. He wanted to harness the dark and overthrow the gods, ushering in an age of darkness. The folk of Oolacile would not resist the temptation of power, and chose to disturb the grave of Manus, the primeval human, also known as the Father of the Abyss. This decision resulted in catastrophe. The wrath of Manus could not be contained. The residents warped into servants of the dark, and bodies of humanity began emanating from the abyss below. Manus was potentially a sorcerer from Oolacile. The odd dark spells referenced an Oolacile sorcerer on the brink of madness. Like any human, Manus eventually died and was buried deep below Oolacile. The nature of his burial suggested he was someone of importance. His grave was encircled with stones. Some scholars suggested Manus might have been the original furtive Pygmy himself. To be furtive meant to avoid attention, and Manus had died alone, away from sight, only for his remains to be defiled centuries later. Another theory proposed that Manus was one of the many Pygmies trapped in the Ringin city who had escaped to Oolacile, where he eventually died. Even after death, remnants of his humanity remained, as evidenced by his reaching through time to retrieve his precious pendant, leaving Gwyndolin on Farkfurl 1. This action demonstrated that despite everything, some fragment of his human consciousness persisted. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, feared the dark as it threatened his age of fire. The encroaching darkness signified the rise of humanity, the coming of the age that should have followed his own. When Oolacile fell to the abyss, Gwyn dispatched one of his 4 knights to resolve the crisis. Knight Artorias was tasked with traversing the abyss, rescuing Princess Dusk, and slaying the Sword of Corruption. Artorias was well equipped for this mission. His great sword was designed to strike harder against servants of the dark. He was accompanied by the great grey wolf Seath, who was much younger during these events. Additionally, Artorias had made a covenant with the beasts of the abyss, granting him protection against its corrupting influence. Despite his preparations, Artorias was bested. He was forced to withdraw from the chasm of the abyss, leaving a trail of dark substance marking his path of retreat. By the time the Chosen Undead reached him, Artorias was nothing but a husk, a shell of the legendary warrior he had once been. His armor confirmed the tragedy. The description spoke of how the death of the armor owner could be surmised from the corrosive dark of the abyss and the tattered azure blue cape that had once been a symbol of pride and glory. Even in his corrupted state, Artorias still appeared to hunt servants of the dark, suggesting some fragment of his original purpose remained. His left hand hung limp and mangled. He had left his great shield behind to protect Seath from the abyss. Artorias had managed to crawl out of the chasm, but corruption had already consumed him. The Chosen Undead freed him from his torment, though the legend of the Abyss Walker did not die with him. This version of events contradicted recorded history. If Artorias fell to the abyss, how was Dusk saved? How was the abyss halted? Why did item descriptions and testimonies refer to Artorias as Oolacile's savior? The truth was that the legend of Artorias the Abyss Walker was a fabrication, a fairy tale told to preserve his honor. In reality, the Chosen Undead navigated through Oolacile Township, fighting endless servants of the dark. They descended through the dungeon into the chasm of the abyss itself, where they discovered young Seath protected by the veil of Artorias' great shield. Seath accompanied the Chosen Undead as he had once accompanied Artorias. Together, they confronted Manus in the depths of the abyss. The soul of Manus was described as a lukewarm lump of gentle humanity. Inspecting the soul revealed humanity at its center, with dark sprites emerging from within. The description confirmed that ancient Manus had clearly once been human, but he became the father of the abyss after his humanity went wild, eternally seeking his precious broken pendant. The pendant had possibly been pillaged from his grave, though this was never explicitly confirmed. The tragedy of Manus was profound. A human who became a monster, driven mad by the theft of something precious, his rage manifesting as the abyss itself that consumed an entire civilization. With Manus defeated, the Chosen Undead returned to find a woman kneeling at Artorias' resting place. This was Kieran, one of Gwyn's 4 knights. If the Chosen Undead carried the soul of Artorias, she would speak, revealing the deceased had been a dear friend. Beside, she wished to pay proper respect and asked if they would part with the soul. In exchange, she offered gold and dark silver tracers. The nature of Kieran's relationship with Artorias remained ambiguous. Were they romantically involved, or did she simply hold great respect for her fellow knight? If attacked and slain, she would cry out, "You humans, my dear Artorias." This statement suggested deeper feelings, though it could also indicate the gulf between gods and humans, with Artorias being her closest companion among the divine. Regardless, Kieran was one of the few who knew the truth about Artorias' fate. She knew the legend was false, yet she kept this knowledge to herself, honoring her fallen comrade memory in silence. Elizabeth spoke after Manus' defeat, thanking the Chosen Undead for rescuing Princess Dusk and ridding Oolacile of the terrible primal human. She acknowledged that they had even halted the spread of the abyss, expressing gratitude from all of Oolacile. However, she would keep the Chosen Undead story to herself, explaining that since they came from a time far ahead, revealing their involvement would be inappropriate. No one would sing their praises, but their greatness would live on in her memory. She would remember all they had done, making it her purpose to preserve the truth even as the world forgot. Pause. Returning to the present, the Chosen Undead could speak with Dusk once more. She meant that long ago in Oolacile, she had been beset by a creature from the abyss and would have perished if not for the great knight Artorias. She admitted her senses had been fled at the time, but there was something about Artorias, a certain balance that perfectly fit the Chosen Undead semblance. She wondered if perhaps they were somehow connected, if it could be possible that the Chosen Undead was the one who had actually saved her. Dusk dismissed these thoughts as fanciful musings, noting that Oolacile had existed many centuries ago. She found it odd that both the Chosen Undead and Artorias seemed to share some resonance, as though both possessed the nature of true greatness. She also reflected on the creature from the abyss that had preyed upon her, recalling certain emotions despite her faded faculties: a wrenching nostalgia, a lost joy, an object of obsession, and a sincere hope to reclaim it. She questioned whether these thoughts could belong to a beast from the abyss, suggesting that perhaps it was not a beast at all. She wished to know the truth, but even Elizabeth would not tell her. Alvina confirmed in the present day that Artorias' story was none but a fabrication, a fairy tale. Though she still respected Artorias, she acknowledged the legend was false. Many bandits and adventurers sought treasures at the Abyss Walker's rave, and Alvina tried to dissuade people from disturbing it, hoping to preserve his legacy and protect Seath. When approaching Artorias' grave in the present, despite centuries having passed, Seath recognized the Chosen Undead. They had fought side by side in the abyss after it. The great wolf howled in anguish, reluctantly picking him his master's sword to prevent the Chosen Undead from entering the abyss again. Seath did not want them to traverse that darkness and succumb to its corruption, but the Chosen Undead was bound by fate to obtain the covenant of Artorias and descend once more into the abyss to confront the Four Kings. The battle with Seath became one of the most sorrowful encounters in the entire journey, a fight between two who had once been allies, each acting according to their own understanding of duty and loyalty. During the journey to Oolacile's past, the Chosen Undead also encountered Hawkeye Goff, another of Gwyn's 4 knights. This giant wielded a bow capable of piercing dragons and had been crucial to Gwyn's victory in the ancient war. Sadly, Goff had been trapped in a tower by those who looked down on his kind. He appeared to be blind, though his lack of vision stemmed not from natural causes, but from his helmet's eyehawk being filled with tree resin by those who dismissed him a brute giant. Goff recognized the Chosen Undead as the one who had freed Artorias, thanking them for allowing the knight to leave the world with his honor intact. He confirmed Chester's account of events, explaining that Oolacile townsfolk had been persuaded by a dark serpent and brought ruin upon themselves. Goff revealed that the black dragon witnessed earlier was Calamite, and though the City of Gods would confront this beast, he would assist the Chosen Undead in taking it down. With the greatest of great bows in, Goff fired an arrow into the sky. The projectile pierced Calamite, forcing the dragon to land where it could be confronted. Calamite was referenced as the last of the ancient dragons, an interesting designation considering the everlasting dragon and Seath still existed. Perhaps ancient referred to a specific lineage or characteristics that distinguished Calamite from other surviving dragons. Calamite's life had been one of solitude. The Chosen Undead ventured to where the dragon had fallen and engaged the beast in combat. Calamite, the bringer of calamity, was slain. After his death, a faction called the Dragon Knights would be born, forging weapons and armor from the scales of the dead dragon. These items proved Calamite's existence to a world that had considered him merely a legend. In death, Calamite finally received acknowledgement of his reality. Pause. The Chosen Undead's pilgrimage neared its end. Offering the Lord's souls to the Lord vessel opened a gateway bathed in blinding white light. Beyond lay the final gauntlet, a stairway patrolled by phantom knights, the souls of those who had dead disembodied by the flame centuries ago. These posed little threat to one who had slain lords and traversed the abyss. Crossing this threshold led to the kiln of the first flame, a wasteland coated in ash. The ash testified to the ferocity with which the flame had once burned, reducing everything around it to powder. Black Knights defended the area, though they too fell before the Chosen Undead. who had become the slayer of lords, a being of immense power forged through countless trials. These knights had been stationed to protect Gwyn that he linked the flame. A suit of black knight armor could be obtained on a narrow bridge, its description confirming that the knights had followed Lord Gwyn when he departed to link the fire, only to be burned to ashes in the newly kindled flame. They wandered the world as disembodied spirits at after, forever bound to their duty even in death. Deeper into the kill, a golden summoning sign to be seen bore the final gate. This sign belonged to Solaire of Astora. If saved from madness in lost Izalith, Solaire had pressed on despite never finding his son. As an undead as so many others, he would conclude his pilgrimage by preparing to set himself ablaze, offering his soul to the flame just as Gwyn had done centuries before. All that remained was to venture through the fog one final time, to face the Lord of Sunlight himself. At the heart of the kill, beside the fabled first flame, stood Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. Only cinders remained of the once great lord. His appearance represented the sacrifice he had made in the depths to which he had descended to keep the flame from extinguishing. Gwyn's family had splintered. His firstborn son had been banished. His youngest daughter was trapped in a time prison at World of End. His other children maintained illusions or led covenants in the shadows. Gwyn had no choice but to link the fire with his own body, sacrificing everything he was and everything he had built. Offering much of himself to the flame had stripped him of his power and decimated his army. His famous lightning miracles were absent in the final confrontation. This was not the mighty Lord of Sunlight, who had struck down dragons with bolts of electricity. This was a hollow shell, a desperate remnant clinging to a dying flame, reduced to swinging a sword with what little strength remained. The tragedy of Gwyn was complete. The being who had feared the dark so greatly had become little more than darkness himself, a shadow of former glory desperately maintaining a lie. The Chosen Undead, with or without Solaire aid, struck down the Lord of Cinder. But Gwyn machinations would continue through the ages. Many Lords of Cinder would waha, continuing to link the fading flame. Eventually, this would result in the creation of the Soul of Cinder, a physical manifestation of who had linked the fire across countless cycles. Every champion who had made the sacrifice merged into this singular entity, forever bound to guard the flame. Two options lay before the Chosen Undead in the moments after Gwyn defeat. Two paths that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of the entire world. Two choices that represented fundamentally different philosophies about the nature of existence itself. Leading betrayal, I father Klus note bedio world. The Gwynwish machinations would continue through the ages. Many Lords of Cinder would waha, continuing to link the fading flame. Eventually, this would result in the creation of the Soul of Cinder, a physical manifestation of who had linked the fire across countless cycles. Every champion who had made the sacrifice merged into this singular entity, forever bound to guard the flame. Two options lay before the Chosen Undead in the moments after Gwyn defeat. Two paths that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of the entire. The first option was to link the fire, to follow in Gwyn's footsteps and fulfill the wishes of Kingseeker Frampt. The Chosen Undead would approach the first flame and off themselves to its hunger. The fire would consume them completely, reducing their physical form to ash while using their powerful soul of fuel. The Age of Fire would be extended for many ages hence, granting the gods and their followers more time to maintain their dominion. The cycle would continue, and eventually another undead would be chosen to make the same sacrifice when the flame inevitably began to fade again. This was the path of tradition, of maintaining the status quo, of believing that the light must never be allowed to fade completely. It was the path Gwyn had chosen, the path countless others had walked before. It seemed noble, seemed heroic, seemed the right thing to do. After all, the gods had warned that without fire, the world would descend into a frigid and frightful darkness. Who would bear such a burden? Who could allow such suffering? But there was another way. The Chosen Undead could turn their back on the first flame, walking away from the dying fire rather than offering themselves to it. In doing so, they would allow the flame to fade naturally, permitting the Age of Fire to finally end as it should have ended centuries ago. the Age of Dark would begin. The age that had been promised to humanity from the moment the Dark Soul was claimed by the Furtive Pygmy. If this path was chosen, the Chosen Undead would exit the kill to find many primordial serpents that outside. Among them were both Cathay and Frampt, ancient beings who had manipulated events from the shadows for countless generations. Strangely, Frampt would kneel before the Dark Lord alongside the other serpents, offering his service despite having previously advocated for linking the fire. This revelation suggested something profound and disturbing. Perhaps Frampt and Cathay had never truly been rivals. Perhaps their apparent opposition was merely theater, a performance designed to give the undead the illusion of choice. Regardless of which path was taken, regardless of whether the fire was linked or allowed to fade, the serpents would benefit. They would endure. They would continue their manipulations. These imperfect dragons, these serpentine beings that were neither truly dragon nor truly something else, had outlasted the everlasting dragons of old. They had outlasted the gods themselves. Their true motivations remained shrouded in mystery, their ultimate goals unknowable. Were they genuinely working toward particular outcomes, or did they simply enjoy watching others struggle and suffer? Did they serve some higher purpose, or were they merely opportunists taking advantage of the world's cyclical nature? The Chosen Undead, now ruling Gwyndolin, a Dark Lord, would preside over the approaching Age of Dark. Humanity's time had finally come. The age that should have begun when the first flames started to fade would now unfold. But would it bring the salvation Cathay promised, or would it bring something else entirely? Pause. How'd everything come to this? How had the fate of Lordran descended into endless repetition, into a cycle that seemed impossible to break? The answer lay in Gwyn's refusal to accept the natural order, in his commission of what would later be called the First Sin. By linking the fire and denying the transition from the Age of Fire to the Age of Dark, Gwyn had halted the undeniable course of nature. Ages were meant to succeed one another just as seasons changed, just as day yielded to night. The Age of Fire should have ended when the flame began to fade. The Age of Dark should have begun, allowing humanity to inherit the world that was their birthright from the moment the Furtive Pygmy claimed the Dark Soul. But Gwyn could not accept this. He feared the dark. He feared humanity. He feared the loss of his power and the end of his reign. So he sacrificed himself to keep the fire burning, creating an artificial extension of an age that should have ended. He commanded his children to shepherd humanity, to manipulate them into believing the dark was something to be feared rather than embraced. Even if the Chosen Undead chose to become the Dark Lord and rule over an Age of Dark, the cycle could not truly be broken. Embers would always remain, tiny sparks that could be fanned back into flame. Those faithful to the Lords, those who believed in the Age of Fire, would forever embark on pilgrimages to link the first flame. There would always be another Chosen Undead, another potential Lord of Cinder, another champion willing to sacrifice themselves. The result was a paradox. The Age of Fire would never truly end as long as people continued linking the flame. But the Age of Dark could never fully prosper either, because the flame would always be rekindled before darkness could establish itself completely. The two ages struggled to coexist in an impossible state, neither able to fully manifest, creating a twisted reality where time itself became convoluted. This was why heroes from different centuries could phase in and out of the same moment. This was why the Chosen Undead could be summoned to help others or be invaded by those from different times. The natural flow of time had been disrupted so thoroughly that past, present, and future bled together, creating a confused mess where causality itself became questionable. In Cathay's words, the Furtive Pygmy had waited for the fire to dim so the Age of Dark could begin. But that never occurred because Gwyn had intervened. The question remained, could Cathay trusted? Was his version of events accurate, or was it simply another manipulation, another lie told to serve his inscrutable purposes? The cycle was infinite, a fabricated timeline of distortion that trapped the world in eternal repetition. Even if darkness settled and the flame appeared to be extinguished, tiny flames would eventually dance across the darkness once more, like embers linked by the lords of past ages. The world could no longer be inherited by humanity in any meaningful sense. The age of dark that should have been theirs had been delayed and corrupted for so long that it might never arrive in its true form. Perhaps, as some hoped, someone would one day paint a tranquil world for those who remained. A new painted world, free from the cyclic constraints, where beings could exist without the constant struggle between light and dark, fire and abyss. A sanctuary not unlike what Ariamis had created, but one that would rot, one that could endure. In the constant battle between light and dark, between the age of fire and the age of dark, perhaps the question itself was wrong. Perhaps the answer lay not in choosing one over the other, but in finding what existed beyond both. What lay beyond the reach of light and the reach of dark? What awaited in that space outside the binary choice that had defined the world for so long? The dragons had once teased out humanity's dearest emotions through their very existence. In their war against the dragons, the lords had discovered hatred, rage, ambition, pride. These emotions shaped the course of history, driving beings to extraordinary deeds both noble and terrible. Perhaps acknowledging these emotions and living authentically according to one's own understanding was more important than serving someone else's vision of how the world should be. Each being faced their own journey, their own struggles, their own choices, whether they served the light or embraced the dark, whether they linked the fire or walked away. Each decision carried weight and consequence. There was no incorrect path, no objectively right choice. There was only the path each individual chose to walk and the reasons they chose to walk it. The Chosen Undead's journey demonstrated this truth. They were not heroes in the traditional sense, not champions who fought for an unambiguous good against a clear evil. They were simply an undead being trying to survive, trying to understand, trying to find meaning in a world that seemed designed to strip meaning away. Every boss they defeated had their own story, their own motivations, their own tragedies. Seath protecting Artorias' grave, Quelag defending her sister, Priscilla asking to be left in peace. Even Gwyn was not a villain but a desperate god trying to prevent what he saw at the end of everything good. The curse of the undead forced beings to confront existence in its rawest form. Death lost its finality, but so did life lose its urgency. The gradual loss of self through hollowing represented the slow erosion of identity and purpose. Without something to fight for, without something to believe in, without something to anchor consciousness, the undead would inevitably lose themselves. This was why some undead succeeded where others failed. It was not simply a matter of strength or skill, though those mattered. It was about maintaining purpose, about refusing to give up even when giving up seemed the only reasonable response. The power of humanity, that dark sprite within, grew stronger through willpower and perseverance. It empowered those who refused to surrender. Oscar, Knight of Astora, had set out with noble intentions but fell before even escaping the asylum. The crestfallen warrior had made it to Firelink Shrine, but lost hope and eventually turned hollow. Laurentius had sought greater power and lost himself in Blighttown. Siegmeyer had been saved so many times that he lost his sense of purpose and worth. Logan had pursued knowledge until it drove him mad. Even Solaire, with his unwavering optimism and faith, nearly succumbed to false hope represented by the sunlight maggot. Yet others endured. If saved from the maggot, Solaire continued forward despite never finding his son. Sieglin traveled across time and space to deliver her mother their last words to her father. Kirin maintained her vigil at Artorias' grave, honoring her fallen companion. Elizabeth remained in Oolacile ruins for centuries, eventually dying at her post. These beings found purpose and clung to it, allowing them to resist the curse's erosive effects. The Chosen Undead stood apart because they could adapt, could persevere through any challenge, could make choices that shaped the world itself. Whether they linked the fire or walked away, whether they showed mercy or dealt death, whether they uncovered truths or left mysteries buried, their journey represented the ultimate expression of human potential in a world designed to crush that potential. Pause. So many voices us across the journey, so many final words spoken before silence claims them. These words deserve remembrance, for they represent the hopes and fears, the dreams and regrets of beings caught in the cycle grip. If you require rest, now is the time. That is, after all, what the bonfire is for. the simple comfort of rest, of a moment's peace in an endless journey. When I gave you that flame, I gave you a part of myself. Please take good care of it. The sacrifice of firekeepers, who give pieces of themselves to maintain the light. Be safe, friend. Don't you dare go hollow. The plea that every undead understands, the fear that one day they will lose themselves. Please, save us up, please. The desperate hope that someone somewhere can break the cycle and offer true salvation. Ah, it is over, my son. It is setting. It is dark, so lair, anguish as his quest ends in darkness, rather than the light he sought. Was it a lie? Have I done this all for nothing? The questioning that comes when purpose crumbles and meaning seems lost. Well, you saved me once again. Dear me, what can I say? Siegmeyer's gratitude tinged with frustration, knowing each rescue diminishes his. I have failed you. My daughter risks life and limb just to find me. Hevethi, I never asked her to do that. A father regret at the burden his existence has placed on those who love him. Mother's ambitions were misguided, no doubt, but surely 1,000 years of atonement is enough. Kulana a plea for her family's suffering to finally end. Farewell, my mother, my sisters. The fair lady's goodbye to family she believes lost, unaware of their proximity. Please, sister, do not cry. I am happy, really. I have you, don't I? The desperate reassurance that love persists even in suffering. I beg of thee, the spread of the abyss must be stopped. Elizabeth's understanding that some threats transcend individual survival. The breaking of curses is the territory of Didas. You must be prepared to give some of yourself. The acknowledgement that salvation requires sacrifice. Beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, what could possibly await us? And yet we seek it, insatiably. Such is our fate. Aldia later musings on the nature of the cycle and what might lie beyond it. These words paint a portrait of a world in decline, of beings struggling against inevitable decay, of hopes maintained despite overwhelming evidence that hope is foolish. They represent the human condition rendered literal through the curse of undeath, the struggle to maintain identity and purpose in the face of entropy, the desperate search for meaning in apparent meaninglessness, the refusal to surrender even when surrender seems rational. Dark Souls is not simply the story of chosen undead ringing bells and slaying lords. It is the story of what happens when the natural order is disrupted, when those in power refuse to relinquish that power, when fear drives decision-making rather than wisdom. It is the story of countless individuals caught in the machinery of forces beyond their control, trying to survive with dignity and purpose intact. Gwyn's fear of the dark created the cycle. His refusal to accept that ages must transition created the curse. His branding of humanity with the dark sign created the undead. Every problem the world faced stemmed from his desperate attempt to maintain his age of fire beyond its natural span. Yet Gwyn was not acting from pure selfishness. He genuinely believed the age of dark would bring suffering and pain. He genuinely thought he was protecting the world by linking the fire. His sacrifice was real, his suffering legitimate. He gave up everything, including his sanity and his very existence, to keep the flame burning. The tragedy was not that he was cruel or evil, but that he was wrong. His fears were not unfounded, but his solution created worse problems than the ones he sought to prevent. The gods feared humanity because humanity represented change, represented an age they did not understand and could not control. Rather than accepting this change, they sought to control humanity, to brand them with curses, to manipulate them into serving the gods' purposes. The ringing knights fought for the